Hi friends, in this tutorial we try to write integration tests using WireMock. First of all, let's try to understand why do we need integration tests and what is it. As usual, we'll do this on simple example. I have already prepared one for you. Let's assume that we have a simple Spring Boot application which calls external API to fetch some data. In our example, we have application which makes requests to GitHub API. I have prepared GitHub client. For those of you who didn't know, GitHub has some API which you can trigger and get some data regarding repositories, branches, etc. For example, if you call API github.com user repos, you will receive repositories for the current user. Let me show you example of request. Let's assume I want to make a call to get a user, my username, some repos with let's say 20 repos, 20 results per page. If I click send, I will receive response from GitHub. As you can see, it has a lot of data in the response. It has ID, some node ID, full name, it has fields like private, it has field owner with all owner details information, and it has a lot of other stuff, as you can see. So let's say that my application, which is Spring Boot, calls this API, fetches some data in the service. Here is my GitHub repository service. It gets first 10 results from the page 1, and it filters by fork. As you can see, we have a fork field. If this repository is fork, this field is true, otherwise it false. Let's say I want to sort for first 10 repos for a specific user, and if is fork. And I map through the response from GitHub. I map it to my response object, and I return just name and owner login. That's it, just simple as it is. There are a bunch of fields, and I want to return just owner login and name of the repository. Okay, and let me get back to my service. As you can see, it's simple application with integration with third-party API. If you navigate to the controller, I have only one method in the repo controller which finds first 10 non-fork repositories for the specific user. If I run this application, and if I navigate to the Postman, for example, and I call my localhost 8080 repo username, I click send, and as you can see, I receive a response. First 10 repos with data for name of the repo and owner login. And let's assume that we want to test, for example, service layer and then controller layer, and how it will work in real case scenario. That's called integration tests. The difference from unit tests is next. In integration tests, we try to test a bunch of layers in our application, while in unit tests, we test only small unit of our app. But in the process of testing, we don't want to trigger real API when running tests. It can be unwanted to trigger real API because we don't want to exceed some API limit, or we don't want to manipulate with real data. And we want some mechanism to send us responses, how GitHub does, for example, but not invoking a real GitHub server. That's the situation, then WireMock can help us. WireMock is a library for stubbing and mocking web services. It constructs an HTTP server that acts as an actual web service. So when you run WireMock in your tests, your application actually calls some service. It doesn't know that it's WireMock because WireMock acts like a real service which you call, and your tests can find the difference between real and mocked server, and that's how you can test, how you can implement integration tests using this WireMock. Using WireMock, you can not only mock server, but also return some custom responses, and it also has ability to return recorded HTTP responses for request matching criteria. You also have the ability to simulate like bad requests, simulate some response, corrupted response from the server to see how your application will work under these conditions. And of course, we will see all these features on this our simple example. First of all, let me create navigate to the test directory and create a new package. Let me call it integration. This is the package where we put our integration tests. Let me close all, and I can stop my server for now. I want to test, first I want to test service. I want to test GitHub repository service. I create first integration test, and I call it a repository service integration test. In my repository service integration test, I want to call my get first wrappers, and I want this get first wrappers call GitHub client, which will be mocked using WireMock, and I want to see how I get these results. So I navigate back to my integration test. I add annotation. First of all, I add annotation Spring Boot test just to be able to use Spring context in the test. To enable WireMock, I need to use annotation WireMock test. And of course, before I use this annotation, I need to add dependency to my application. As you can see, for now I have only a web dependency and Lombok dependency and test dependency. I need to add WireMock dependency to my application. As usual, I can go to Google and just put like WireMock, Gradle, WireMock Maven. It depends on which build tool I use. I already have this dependency prepared, so I just copy it and I add this dependency. Test implementation, WireMock version 3.0.1, its current version for now. After I added this dependency, you can see that I have WireMock test annotation, and this WireMock test will enable my WireMock server. I can specify in this WireMock test, I can specify different values. I can specify port and HTTPS if it's enabled. So I want to specify HTTP port, for example, 8181. If you don't specify this HTTP port, WireMock will set up random port every time your repository service integration test will be triggered. And I create new directory under my test. I create resources directory, and I create new file, application properties. It's my file for test application properties. As you remember, we have GitHub URL. I can show you how it works. We have GitHub properties with only one property, GitHub URL. I use this property inside my client just to form the URI from this property. So in my tests, I don't need to use this API github.com. I just need to use mocked one. So I put my HTTP localhost because WireMock will run under localhost, and I need to specify port which I created, 8181. And when my tests will work, WireMock will start on localhost 8181, and from the application properties it creates client with GitHub URL localhost 8181, and then my tests will be fetching data not from the GitHub API but from the mocked server. Okay, I need to add my service dependency. I can just auto-wire it, repository service. And for now, I don't need anything else. Let's try to write our first test. Let's say we want to test happy case scenario. So we want to test, for example, get first 10 repos. And if I want to receive some information regarding my WireMock, I can use WireMock runtime info. WireMock runtime info contains some information like base URL, WireMock port, HTTP port, HTTP base URL, etc. In case you need it in your tests, you can get it from this WireMock runtime info. Let me show you something like this. Sbut. I just want to show you that we have a port and base URL inside this info. If I run this test, for example, I will receive data in my tests. Here it is, localhost 8181, HTTP base URL and HTTP port. Of course, for now in my tests I don't need it. Let's say I want to prepare call repository service, get first repos, and I want to specify username like ABCD. And let's say I want to specify, of course, let me specify my own GitHub username just to show you that this will work in tests. Let me specify my username, and isFork is false. I want to get first non-fork, let me, rename this, get first 10 non-fork. Repos returns first 10 non-fork. We expect that if we call get first 10 non-fork repos, our service will return us first 10 non-fork repos from the client. Okay, and we need to be able to call this API. We need to stub the data first. We need to prepare a stub. For example, when we call this URL in the client, it will return us some data. To do this, you can use a stub4 method from the WireMock, and stub4 you can specify get or post. As you can see, stub4 is from the WireMock, And inside stub 4, you need to specify mapping builder. So you need to specify get method or post method. In our case, it's get method. So I just specify get. And we need to specify pattern for URL, which will be matching the client URL. So I want to specify something like URL. You can specify URL equal to, URL matching. For example, if you don't want to specify exact URL, you want to use URL path matching, and you can specify regex. And let's say I want to specify users, and it's the same URL, should be the same URL as I have in this GitHub client. So here's my base URL, then I specify users, username, repos, and let me just copy paste it. Instead of username, of course, I use my username, and I remove this one. And let's say I don't want to specify request params. I want just to specify only part of the URL. I can do this by using regex, and I can say after repos, I want any request param. It will be like this from A to Z. Anyone, something like that. So I want to use this regex to specify my URL path matching users, username, repos. After that, request param. It can be any path of the URL, and that's it. And what else I need to do is I want to return, will return, and I want to return something like OK 200 for the happy flow, and I want to return with header content type application JSON. And what else? I want to return some body just to be able to test it. And with JSON, not here, and with header, let me put it like this, with response body. And I can use with response body, I can use with JSON body, I can use with body, just a string. You can see we have a lot of options for the body. We can specify even file, if we put file to the resources, and we can specify even file. In this scenario, I will show you JSON body. And I need to specify body for the JSON. Let me prepare some response. I create GitHub repository. Here is my classes for response from GitHub. As you can see, I created only 3 fields: name, owner, and fork. GitHub owner has only 1 field login because I don't need all these fields from the GitHub. I don't need them because my task doesn't require them. So let me get back to the service. I create GitHub repository, and let me specify name ABC, for example, and let me specify is fork as false, and GitHub owner and let's specify some owner, something like that, just to see the difference from the real data from the GitHub. And I specify GitHub repository set owner, and let me create another repository. And I want to set this as true for fork, CBD, for example, and owner is the same. Something like that. And I want to return this. I need to convert to JSON node. I need object mapper. Let me add this private object mapper. And I can use this object mapper to convert my GitHub repositories to classes to the JSON. And of course I need a list GitHub repository. And I add my first repository and second one. And I use object mapper value to tree repos. And I created JSON node, which I can pass to with JSON body method. Something like that. And then when my service call client, it will return my stubbed response with my prepared data. And how can I verify it? I can use response. I can use standard methods like verify, assert that from the assert_j. Okay, and I can verify that response is not null. I can verify that assert that. I guess I imported wrong. Yeah, something strange. Import. Let me import correct assertion. Assert that. Here it is. Assert that, for example, that response has size is equal to 1, because 1 is fork and 1 is not fork. I need only 1. And what else can I verify? I can use verify from the WireMock to verify that API was called with specific data. I can call verify, but please make sure that you use verify and with correct import. And I can verify get requested for, and I can copy this and I can check that it was called, for example, with query params. As you can see, my client has some query params like type, type source, page, and per page. So I can use this one. Let me copy. Query param type and source. And I need to import these constants from my GitHub client. And I can add as much query params, page as 1. And of course, I want to add per page as 10. I need equal to, sorry. I want to check that these query params are equal to certain value. Here it is. And that's my first test. Let's run it and check how it works. Let's run my test and see if it passes. As you can see, it passed. Let's check the logs. As you can see, we have a bunch of logs from the WireMock, and we can see that it started, and we can see that my service was called, and you can see that after test was finished, server was stopped. And yeah, it worked and it passed. And how can you make sure that you call correct WireMock instead of actual one? You can navigate to GitHub client. You can put like breakpoint here and run your test in debug mode, and you will catch this breakpoint. And what can you do? You can just try to make request and see what response you receive. Here is response. And as you can see, here's our content type, which I put for application JSON. Here's our body with our data, which I prepared. As you can see, it's not real data from a real GitHub server. And yeah, you can run your test as much time as you want, and you don't need to worry that you trigger real API. And that's the main advantage of using WireMock for your integration tests. Let me show you another approach for stubbing your data. WireMock has a feature called record and playback, and it can create stub mappings automatically from requests it has received. Combined with its proxy feature, this allows us to record stub mappings from interaction with existing APIs. Thus, you don't need to create stub response data manually. Let's check how we can organize it in our example. Two approaches are available: recording or snapshotting. The same results can be achieved with either, so which one you choose depend on whatever first fits for your workflow. If you are new to WireMock, recording is probably the simplest option for getting started. So I'll show you recording. We can use recording in different ways. We can use browser, and we can use API for WireMock. I will show you browser approach. First, we need to start WireMock server and don't stop it. We can achieve this by looping infinite times and running in our test just to avoid exiting from the test itself. What can we do? We can get to our test and we can use like while true. And you know what, let me put thread sleep, for example, 4,000 milliseconds and something like that. This code will prevent our test from exiting, and if you run it, you will see that this test is actually working infinite. And while our test is working, our WireMock is not shut down. So we can navigate to its UI in the browser and start recording. For that, we need to navigate to the browser. Let me open it. And we need to navigate to localhost 8181 admin recorder. As you can see, admin is with two underscores. And we need to specify target URL to record. target URL is our GitHub URL. So we just copy it. And we can click record, and we record it. And once we call this GitHub API with every request, it will be recorded by WireMock. Let me show you how. Let me call this, where it is. Let's say we want to record this API. It has a lot of response. Let me use another username, for example abcd. This username has only one repo, and I want to call, instead of GitHub API, I call http localhost 8181 and I guess users. And once I call my WireMock server with my request data, it will check which data can be triggered from the real API by this URL, and if it receives data, it will record it. But to make this work, WireMock has to store somewhere these stubs, and default folder is mappings. So I need to, under test resources, create new directory and call it mappings. And let's try. As you remember, recording is in progress. Let me try to trigger request. And you can see I received response. As I told you, this ABCD has only one project board. And once I click stop, I can see that message that captured one step mappings. And inside my mappings, I can see JSON file with data, with real data from GitHub. Thus, I don't need to create this body manually. And that's the perfect way to save you some time, just to avoid creating all these boilerplate data on your own. Just use real server, call it once, store these mappings, and then use it whenever you need it. And don't forget to stop the server. And since we don't need this code anymore, I can delete it. And next time, when you create test, for example, this one, I just want to show that first get first 10 fork repos. For example, fork repos returns first 10 fork repos. And let me, delete all this data, because I have I will use this request and mapping with this stubbing. So I don't even need to use this one, because WireMock will visit mappings folder, will find some stubbing, and will use it to stub your data. And of course, I don't need this. And just to make sure we call exact stubbing, I need to use ABCD username. And if I want fork, I need to put fork as true. And let me check. This user has only one repo, fork. It's non-fork, I guess. Yeah, here is body and fork. Fork is true, so we want to receive, we will receive only one repo. We don't need to change this, and we also need to change this one. Let's run our tests and see how they work. As you can see, one failed. Let's check why. And we can see that user ABCD repos and was ABCD repos. We wanted 20, but it was actually 10. I guess that's because I recorded for 20 per page. And of course, you can change it manually. These mappings, you can just put it page 10, run it again. And you can copy paste this. Yeah, as you can see, test pest, and that's perfect to test pest. And that's another approach how you can use your stubbing. You can create stubbing manually, and you can use a recording, for example, to create stubbing with recording. And you also can create stubbing manually using JSON. You just need to create JSON file and put all this data all by yourself. But don't forget to put it under mappings directory. It's default directory where WireMock searches for the data. Of course, you can change this in the WireMock configurations. And what if I want to set up some error? For example, what if I want to test my data on some errors? If I want to return, let's say I want to create some situation where GitHub client will fail to return me response, for example. And of course I can do this. And let me check how we can do this. Get first 10 fork repos, timeout error. And let me create stubbing. This time I will create stubbing manually, and as this how you can do it, let me add user, for example, timeout case user, and we call URL timeout case user, and we don't need a body actually because our request will fail. And we can simulate our timeout using next field. We can use a fixed delay, for example, with after awk with a fixed delay. And let's say we want to set our delay 3000 milliseconds. And what we expect to receive. Actually, let's run our test and we see the result. As you can see, it started. It's waiting for response. And we receive failed test. Why? Because we have GitHub responses now. And because we have received after 3000 milliseconds our response. But what if we extend our response to 5000 milliseconds? We extend our delay and we will wait 5000 milliseconds. And what does it mean for us? It means that we don't have a timeout for our client. And if you check our GitHub config, REST template config, sorry, we return only a REST template without any timeout configurations, and that's not good. And using this integration test, it can reveal some potential errors in your application. So let's change our REST template to use timeout. We will use, instead of new REST template, we will use REST template builder. And we will return REST template using REST template builder, and we will set connect timeout, for example, 2000 milliseconds, duration of milliseconds 2000, and we set up read timeout also 2000 milliseconds. And let's try to run this test again. Click run. And we should see timeout exception in logs. Let's check. As you can see, read timeout. And that's perfect because we can simulate delay from the server. And once we simulate a delay, we can think about some measures how we can prevent situations from our application to fail when delay happens from the server. It's not easy to simulate delay from a real server, but using WireMock you can simulate delays. You can even extend configurations and use simulate random delay, for example, instead of hard-coded value. But in our example, I will use only this delay. And let's say we received this response and we want to deal with it somehow. Let me get back to our GitHub client. And as you can see, we catch exception if something happens and we return empty list. So we expect that if something happened during execution, we receive empty list. So we receive that response is not null, but size is 0. And timeout case user, this one. Repos. Yeah. And let's run test once again. And as you can see, this time it passed. And we also receive error message from our GitHub client, so we can make sure that our logs works. Error happened during GitHub client call, and we receive appropriate message from this exception. I think this can help you to debug your code without interacting with real API. And in the same way, we tested our service. Let's say we stop generating our test. We tested some happy flow. We tested some unhappy flow, some timeout. Let's say we want to add new integration. For example, repo controller integration test. And you can test another class the same way we did with our service class. This time we test controller, so we need to configure mock MVC to be able to make requests to the mock MVC. So I auto-wire it. And I can write my first test. Let's get back to our repo controller. As you can see, it has find, first, stand, non-fork. And of course, as usual, I create some happy flow. Something like void should get user repos. Throws exception because mock MVC throws exception. And what I want to do, I want to mock MVC perform get from this URL repo, and I need to import mock MVC. It's a good question which one we should import. I guess this one, and I specify URL repo. It should be this one, mock request builders get repo, and what I want to use, username equals abcd. I use ABCD because I already created mappings for this ABCD. So I want to use for the same username this happy flow. And I create content type. content type is application JSON, and accept application JSON. And I expect when I call this API, I expect to receive status awk, let's import it. And what else I want to I expect from this? I expect JSON pass. It's one way to check your response body. You can think of it as ugly solution, but I really like it because it's a really simple way to check your body from the response from the controller mock MVC, so I can test that my first value of my list will with name field will be equal to I guess I imported JSON path from the wrong. No, not yet. Equal to and let me check. The name of repo is Sbut, and I expect that, let me copy paste because we can save some time. Owner login is equals to ABCD, I guess. And let's run our first test for controller. Oh, it's failed. Let's check why. No value at JSON path name. I guess we didn't catch the mock. Repo username ABCD. ABCD, yeah, users, ABCD repos. Source page per page. And let me check, fork is true, right? Fork is true, and my controller wants to fork is false. That's why it fails. Not a problem at all. Let me create new file. User with one non-fork result JSON. I just copy this. And what I want to do, I want to change ID to some random, and here and here. And I want to change this user ABCD to another one because I already have the same request, and it will fail to run. So I use non-fork one repo, something like that. And let me go to my test. This one. Let's run again. Yeah, sorry, I used non-fork, but fork is true. Should be fork false. Let's try again. As you can see, it passed because I changed the body to whatever I needed. What else? You know what? Let me create another test. But this time I want to simulate 4 of 3. I want to show you how you can specify custom exception, custom HTTP message to your stub. Let me navigate to repository and check this one, copy paste, and should get return error if client exception, something like that. And I don't need body. What if I want to return instead of awk, for example, bad request? I can use bad request, but I can also specify status and my custom value for the status. And let me use, for example, client exception user, and you know what, let me put it here. Let's run and check how it works, and we expect status is I don't know which status it will be, because I'm not sure how my controller will work when we receive status 4 or 3, and let's check it for now how it will work. I'm not sure it will return result, but I'm not sure about error. No value, and status is OK. Fine. So I don't know if it's fine for application, for your application, but for now my application returns me OK, even though client fails with 4.3. And you know what, let me check that, for example, some data is not present. I can use length just to check that length is 0. And thus I can check that my client exception 4.3, my controller will return awk HTTP status with no data inside. And that's the approach how you can specify status. As you can see, you can specify not only get, but you can use post, for example, and you can also specify request body. You can specify not only request body, you can specify request params, form params, path params. You can specify query params. You can specify multi-part request body. As you can see, using WireMock, you can create a bunch of tests for your application, and it will help you to find the potential bugs in your code and fix it. And to run all tests, we can use something like, if you use Maven, you can clean install, for example. If you use Gradle, you can use build. And just to make sure that our tests are working, we can use debug mode, for example. Let me run my clean build. In debug, we will see that our build task will run our WireMock. As you can see, here is our logs from the tests, and as you can see, build is successful because all my tests are passed. And yeah, that's actually all what I wanted to show you. I guess this first meeting with WireMock will help you to investigate this topic further, and will help you to start writing integration tests if you are not doing it. If you are already writing integration tests, probably you have your own tools for this. But for those of you for everyone, I encourage you to cover your code not only with unit tests but also with integration tests, because it can lead to better code quality and it can avoid potential bugs in production. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I see you next time. Goodbye.